Hello everyone, this is Nayiri from Low Carb and Fasting. This episode is part of the series on this channel called Type 1 Diabetics Talk, where both host and guest are Type 1s, and you guessed it, we discuss Type 1 diabetes. Today's guest may be familiar to you because I have interviewed both of them separately before as part of this series. The playlist will be below. Please check all the videos out. And if you like this channel and my content, please consider subscribing. Thank you. Okay, today I have the honor to host for the second time Dr. Ryan Attar from the US. I think you're from Connecticut, right?
Correct, yep.
And Dr. Jonathan Furniss from the UK.
Hi.
Welcome to Low Carb and Fasting.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, Dr. Attar, let's start off with you. Can you tell our audience, if they haven't seen you on Twitter, which is very unlikely, however, for anyone who hasn't heard of you, can you introduce yourself briefly and your background?
Yeah, again, thanks for having us. I love your channel. I love the conversations that you have with Type 1s, and yeah, you do great stuff. Yeah, like as you mentioned, I'm Dr. Ryan Attar. I'm a naturopathic physician and nutritionist based out of Connecticut in the USA. I'm a Type 1 diabetic. I've been a Type 1 diabetic since 2006. I've been following Bernstein's method since 2010. I maintain normal non-diabetic blood sugars. My last A1C was 4.6, and I help my patients achieve that as well. And I'm very passionate about his method and the low carb approach, and I love talking about this stuff.
Thank you. And Dr. Furniss, your background?
Hi. Yeah, thank you. So my PhD is not in medicine, it's in engineering. And I think that gives me a very different outlook and a different way of approaching problem solving. We've seen it with many other engineers. They're sort of a bottom-up approach to problem solving in health, rather than a top-down where we see a symptom and then try and fix that with drugs. So I think that helps me in my approach to managing my Type 1 diabetes since I've had since 2012. So I was diagnosed age 39, I'm now 50. And I've been living a very low carb, real food lifestyle for the last almost 5 years now. And like Ryan, enjoying very good HbA1c results, not quite as low as Ryan's. So in US units, about 5.0. In UK units, about 32 millimoles per mole, average blood sugar or HbA1c. And yeah, my life was turned around by this change that I made, primarily in nutrition, but other aspects of health. And that caused me to do a lot of work now in both the Type 2 diabetes space. So I help to run a Type 2 reversal program where we offer principally nutritional advice, but the other pillars of health are also covered. And yeah, we're seeking to achieve the same kind of results as Dr. David Unwin in that program with his more or less 50% remission rate. That's clinical drug-free remission. So David is the head of the charity within which that service that we've developed exists, the public health collaboration. Then in the Type 1 space, I've been doing more work with Dr. Ian Lake. I think he's been on your series of podcasts, maybe once or possibly more. And together with Ian, we run a Type 1 diabetes retreat in the UK. So that's a 6-day retreat, a very intensive program. And I help Ian to deliver part of that. And then we do some one-day events as well. We had our latest one on Saturday, where we invite Type 1s and healthcare practitioners supporting Type 1s come in, and we talk to them about very low carbohydrate treatment programs for Type 1 diabetes.
Thank you, John. So thank you for all the good work both of you do, by the way. Other than your good, excellent, normal A1Cs, and you were both diagnosed as adults, there's something else that's common between the two of you that I just thought about. You're both into athletics, so Ryan, I think you do CrossFit, and John,
Yep.
you're a cyclist. So
Yeah, mainly cycling, but I've done all sorts.
So how do you maintain normal blood sugars during exercise? Because many people struggle with that. Ryan, you use a pump, but Jonathan, you're doing multiple daily injections. Who's going to start first, Ryan?
Well, yeah, I've always been very athletic, and CrossFit about since 2010. CrossFit actually is what introduced me to a low carb diet too. Was my gym in 2010, before CrossFit was even a real big thing. They had like a paleo diet month, and it was a low carb paleo diet, and they were ahead of the curve for CrossFit and for diet too in 2010 doing that. And I tried it, and I couldn't believe how much easier my blood sugars were to control, and that's what started me down this whole path. But yeah, I've been doing CrossFit since then, and jujitsu occasionally too. And fitness can have different effects on your blood sugars, and heavy lifting, sprinting, interval training can sometimes spike our blood sugar. And more endurance stuff can cause our blood sugars to go down. CrossFit leans more towards the spiking blood sugars, but it's usually a mix that keeps things balanced. There is an unpredictable nature to CrossFit, which can make it a little challenging. But it does make it easier with the pump, and I can suspend basal and have normal blood sugars. I do take insulin for heavy lifting days. If it's heavy squats, heavy deadlifts, bench press, shoulder press, these things, I'll give myself insulin before the workout and keep things normalized. But otherwise, I usually stay pretty steady. I generally work out fasted. Having food and insulin on board further complicates the what exercise can do. So if I keep that out of it, it's usually pretty easy. I don't do much endurance training, but I know that is a challenge for blood sugar. So I'm curious what John does for managing his blood sugars on cycling rides.
Yeah.
Suspend your pump. So I bet you take glucose with you, right? You have glucose because that's important in endurance training, right?
I always carry dextrose tablets with me.
Yeah.
I carry those because they're precise. I know precisely how many grams of carbs are in there, and I know precisely how long that's going to take to reach my bloodstream. So I don't mess around with gels or bananas or cereal bars or literally anything to correct a low blood sugar, which, as has been mentioned in a very long, some of my distance rides might be 6 or even 8 hours long. And I think what's important there is that I've adjusted my basal accordingly. If I was going to do such a long ride, I would be putting in 0 basal the night before. I split my dose, so 8 a.m., 8 p.m. So nothing the night before, nothing on the morning, and then I'll just treat any glucose excursions with Nova Rapid to bring it down, or dextrose to bring it back up. But usually these days I can ride a low, flat blood sugar throughout the exercise. And I see indeed what Ryan just referred to, a stress effect of vigorous exercise bringing blood sugar up. And sometimes I might use that to correct a low, put in a really hard effort for a few minutes to, if I was feeling a bit low, to bring up the blood sugar. Saves me having to put sugar in, or any other thing that I have to hand if I haven't got my dextrose tablets. But yeah, that's a requirement for me always to carry those around. I was a carb fueled athlete for my life before 2012. And for the first 7 years of type 1 diabetes, And with all that finger prick testing, the excursions were wild and, consistent. It was just up and down, up and down, up and down, horrible. And I suffered all the other, problems of carbohydrate fueling, gastrointestinal distress, the glycemic excursions, more insulin needs, driving insulin resistance, the hassle and the planning of all that fueling, hitting the wall, all massive problems that have been completely eliminated by shifting my metabolism to fat burning.
It's great that you're using the glucose to correct. I get a lot. I hear a lot of pushback from type 1s that are doing a low carb approach or just want to eat like naturally, and they don't want to take glucose. They want to correct with food, and that's not a good idea. The glucose correction should be treated like a medication, just like insulin, where it's precise and measured. And so either using glucose tablets or the candies that are made with dextrose, Smarties here in the US. I know they're called Rockets in the UK, but anything with pure dextrose that you can measure and correct precisely is the way to go.
So what insulin are you using? What's your long-acting insulin, John? Because you're splitting it. Is it the Tresiba? No, it's not, is it?
It is Tresiba, and I know it has a half-life that's supposedly like 30 or 36 hours or something, but I still split it anyway. I just find that helps me to manage the changes that are happening in life. So sometimes my mates might call me up and say, "Oh, the sun is shining. Fancy going for a big ride?" And I might say yes, and that helps me to have less basal on board if I'm splitting it half and half, if I'm going to go out and do such a thing at quite short notice. Whether I put my Tresiba in all at once or split under normal circumstances, I don't know if it would make much of a difference. I did find it made a difference when I was on the glargine product prior to my switch to Tresiba. I was putting it all in at night, like 10 p.m. And then I was seeing lows overnight until I started splitting it. So I've been splitting it ever since then.
And for bolus, you use NovoRapid, which you already mentioned, to cover your meals as well. Ryan, I think, so what insulin are you using in your pump? Because I know you use regular insulin or R insulin as Bernstein recommends meals. So what's in your pump?
So I started the looping thing a couple months ago, and it's just been great. So it's very easy and I'm getting the same results, but it's just much easier to maintain. I'm actually using Liumjev, the ultra rapid, in my pump. So I'm not a fan of the ultra rapid insulins for meals. I mean, they're designed for high carb meals to act rapidly and attempt to normalize blood sugar on a high carb meal, but it never works that way. The reason why I use it is because I want the looping software to be as fast as possible, and so it's giving me minor corrections to my basal based on my blood sugars, and there's already a delay waiting for your blood sugar to show up on your CGM. It could be like 15 minutes but sometimes, but the difference between a change in your blood sugar versus the interstitial fluid that the CGM is measuring. And then the pump is going to give you insulin, and that there's a delay with absorption for that. So the ultra rapids will absorb faster, and that's why I'm using it. So I don't use it at all for meals. I still have a separate injection of our insulin for the meals, but I have that Liumjev in my pump for the basal. So yeah, I'm using the fastest insulin for my basal, basically. Interesting.
So my question is, so now you're doing the looping, Ryan. But your system, your pump doesn't necessarily know that you have also taken regular insulin.
Yeah.
Endogenously. So do you ever crash when, you know, your pump is correcting without realizing that you already have taken an injection of regular insulin?
No, it seems to work pretty well. I know there is, I don't do this, but I know there is a way to tell the pump that you took different separate insulin from the pump. But no, I take my bolus. I bolus like 20 minutes before a meal and eat, and it's fine. The thing I like about what Loop does, and you know, before using this, the times I struggled most and had the most to kind of correct with is nighttime, late dinners and nighttime, the tail end of a big protein meal. And it's really tough, and you know, there's ways around it, but you know, it requires you taking more insulin at night, or splitting your dose at night, or just having a smaller dinner, which I don't like to do. I like to have a big dinner at night, or have an earlier dinner. And so it's tough. So the looping, you know, I still dose my R insulin for that meal, but it takes care of that tail end of that protein spike at night really well. And yeah, I'll dose the same and let the R insulin do its work. And then if I'm getting a little bit of a spike later in the night, the loop is on that, and it doesn't spike very high, and I'm always in the morning perfectly normal.
Ryan, let's discuss some common nutritional deficiencies that think you believe that type 1 diabetics should be tested for. And don't, of course, but what are they, and why? What causes these nutritional deficiencies? I know in a previous presentation I've watched you in a conference, you mentioned zinc, and that's the one that stuck in my head, for example. But what else? Why are type 1 diabetics prone to nutritional deficiencies?
Well, you know, there's one that I think that is very easy for all of us to correct for, and we should. And this goes for type 1 diabetics in general, and especially low carb type 1 diabetics. That's electrolytes. Yes. And I'm assuming both of you take some kind of electrolyte mix.
I add salt to my water, and I take magnesium. They're the only two I take, but I do have a question about, I take zinc as well, zinc supplement, but I do, which isn't part of the electrolytes, but I wanted to ask you about potassium as well. We'll come to that in a minute. So I don't know about you, John. John, do you take any magnesium?
Yeah, I have a magnesium supplement. I'm very supplement light. I'm generally of the opinion that the quality of my food is so high that I'm getting what I need. And I've never been tested for any nutritional deficiencies or been treated by a nutritional therapist to correct any such deficiencies. But I do believe that my indoors lifestyle leaves me vitamin D deficient. And I do believe that in general, across the population, soil deficiency leads to magnesium deficiency for most people. And so I've been keen to take magnesium and D3 for those reasons. And then, like you, I'm keen on salt. I add salt to my meals, and I take salt with me for extended endurance exercise, especially when it's hot.
Yeah, that's. I'm in the same boat. Like I don't like supplementing with a lot of things. If I am, I ask myself, why do I need this, and why am I not getting it from my diet? And you're right about magnesium being it's not in our food as it used to be. It's not in our soil as much. And salt is something that, you know, humans and other animals supplement with, where, you know, animals will seek out like mineral rocks and lick them, and you know, we humans have always used salt in our food, and it's very, very important. Specifically type 1 diabetics, why would we need more salt? Not us so much, but a typical average type 1 diabetic is going to have high blood sugars, and they're going to be urinating a lot. They're peeing out those high blood sugars, but they're also losing sodium, potassium, magnesium. And and likely could benefit from supplementing. A low carb diet, we excrete more sodium, and you know, people will notice this when they start the first time they start a low carb diet. They'll lose a lot of weight very rapidly, and a lot, you do burn fat, but a lot of that is water weight. And whenever we lose water, whether we sweat out that water, whether we pee out that water, we're losing electrolytes with that: sodium, potassium, magnesium. So it's really, really important to add those back in. And you know, as far as like individualizing this, you can get your sodium and potassium levels tested on any blood work. A metabolic panel is pretty standard on most blood work. Magnesium is a little tougher to assess, and you really need a special test called RBC, red blood cell magnesium, to see how much magnesium is inside of your cells. Here in the USA, it can be difficult to get a doctor to do tests for you sometimes. Fortunately, we have private labs that you don't need a doctor with. Is it the same in the UK?
Not that I'm aware of. No, I don't think it is. Because
Okay.
I've looked into it. Yeah.
That's unfortunate. You know, because the same thing happens with getting the right prescriptions and insulin that you need, where doctors kind of gatekeep that for us, and we can't get what we need. But if you're here in the UK, you can use Quest. Has their own self-pay. You don't need a doctor. Quest is the big lab here, and there's a lab called Ulta Labs that works through them too. It's very reasonably priced too, that you can get things like RBC magnesium tested, and it's very commonly low in folks, magnesium. In our population, it's going to be even lower because we're losing more fluids and electrolytes. And yeah, it's one of the few things where almost everyone could benefit by taking magnesium. Magnesium has roles in our nervous system and DNA metabolism, blood pressure, even insulin sensitivity it can influence. It's something like 300 different biochemical reactions in the body use magnesium as a cofactor. So it's a really important mineral. And the only potential downside is if you take too much, it can cause loose stools. So, you know, if you do take magnesium and are experiencing that, back off your dose a little bit. It's not that you're having a reaction to the magnesium. It's likely that you just took too much and your body just can't handle it. And it has when it's in your gut and not being absorbed, it has a osmotic pull. It pulls water in, and that's what clears you out. And they'll even purposely give you high doses of magnesium before a colonoscopy to do that. So you want mild doses, like 100 to 200 milligrams is usually a good starting point. Yeah, people notice as soon as they start taking magnesium, they sometimes sleep better. They're more calm. So it's a really good one. And then the electrolytes in general are just really important. And yeah, it always surprises me how many low carb people don't realize that they need salt and electrolytes. And it really is essential. What I tell people to do is use one of the food tracking apps like MyFitnessPal or Chronometer. And
Ketogains. I think you recommend Ketogains as well. Ketogains.
Well, their whole program is great and definitely in line with Bernstein's diet macros. And they have electrolyte protocols as well. But as far as like tracking your food, those two apps, MyFitnessPal and Chronometer, are great, and you can actually see how much sodium, potassium, and magnesium you're getting in your food in a day. You could look at those specific nutrients. So you would track all of your food, track any of the salt that you add to your food. If you're using an electrolyte supplement, you add that on there. And these apps have all of like the commercial foods and products on there if you're using anything. And then yeah, see how much sodium, potassium, and magnesium you're getting in the day. And then you can say, hey, I need to add more, I need to supplement, or I don't. someone on a low carb diet needs like between 5 and 6 grams of sodium daily, likely even more if you're an athlete and it's summertime and you're sweating. Potassium's a little less. It's like 3 to 4 grams daily. So yeah, so I would track all that, and if you're not hitting those goals, add an electrolyte supplement. I use Element, and they have a good ratio of sodium to potassium and a little magnesium even in their products. But there's a few good ones out there, and it can be really helpful if you're not getting enough of those electrolytes. Brain fog, fatigue, achy muscles, poor sleep, even poor digestion can all be a problem with low electrolytes. It's basically like a hangover, and that's what a hangover is, because your body has been trying to get rid of all that alcohol, and you're peeing it out, but you're not just peeing out the alcohol. You're losing sodium, potassium, and magnesium in water, and so it's dehydration and electrolyte imbalance that is a hangover, which is why folks on a low carb diet may notice hangovers are worse, because we need more sodium and water in general, and probably aren't getting enough, and then you add the alcohol on top of that, it's going to make it a worse hangover.
That's brilliant. Okay, so we kind of covered potassium, you mentioned. So so I had a question in my group actually from a lady, and she said, so when she's working out, she's sweating in the summertime. Yep. And she says, so she's losing, or she thinks she's losing a lot of potassium. What else are we losing? Of course, I can answer that. We're using a lot of sodium, right? When we're sweating.
Yeah. I saw that question. It's likely she's losing all of her electrolytes, not just potassium. It can be tricky to supplement just both potassium alone, and taking too much can cause heart issues. I like the proportions that Element uses, which is like one serving is 1,000 milligrams of sodium and I believe it's 200 potassium. We need a little bit more potassium to that ratio. It's like 2 to 3 ratio potassium to sodium is what we need in our normal diet. The reason why they have a little less potassium is it's fairly easy to get potassium on a low carb diet. It's in a lot of very common low carb foods. All the meats, fish, chicken, nuts have a lot of potassium. Leafy greens, cruciferous vegetables all have a lot of potassium. Avocados are one of the highest sources of potassium. So it's fairly easy to get potassium on a low carb diet. And this person, I would say, plug what you're eating into one of those apps and see. And it's likely you need both sodium and potassium, and or even maybe just need sodium. But yeah, the apps are good about figuring that out. There's also, if someone is potassium deficient, there are the potassium salts that for the food, and it's instead of sodium chloride, it's potassium chloride, and a lot of times it's a mix of sodium chloride and potassium chloride, and you can use that on your food. Another tool somebody could potentially use to help with these electrolyte issues.
Ryan, coming back to the zinc. Now, I remember, as I said in your presentation in the conference, you mentioned zinc deficiency. What's happening there? And also, I don't recall exactly, but did you also mention the B vitamins for perhaps vegetarian or vegan people?
Definitely. Well, and zinc for vegetarian and vegan folks. Zinc is in like beef and shellfish, and B vitamins are on all the protein foods too, especially B12. And yeah, definitely vegetarians, it's something they should, get tested if you can. Most doctors, even if they're not on board with a diet or supplemented things, they'll test your B12 and folate and maybe even zinc. And if you're in the USA, you can get these things through a private lab. If not, it might be useful to supplement, but I would always test first and see if you're deficient. And yeah, zinc is an important one. Involved in insulin sensitivity as well. Hormone production like testosterone uses zinc as a cofactor. So these are important nutrients. Zinc can be tricky to supplement with too. You usually want to take a zinc copper supplement because you need both of those minerals in the right proportion, or they can throw each other off if you take one or the other. And you'll know if you do this, if you take zinc on an empty stomach, it does not feel good. It really bothers the stomach. So you always want to take it with food. But yeah, they can be really important. And yeah, I again suggest testing, and I believe you can look at those nutrients too on those food tracking apps as well, and see what you're getting through your food, and then add in if you're not getting enough. A lot of people, with really good intentions, start supplementing with things that they might not even need, but I would make sure that you actually do need them, and not just kind of wasting your money of stuff that you're already getting through your food.
John, any questions to Ryan? We covered quite a lot.
I think, well, John brought up vitamin D too. And that's, we naturally make vitamin D from the sun. And even in the summertime, most people don't get enough sun. You have to be outside like midday for like a 45 minutes or an hour with a lot of your skin exposed to be able to make enough vitamin D for what we need. And yeah, so most of us, even in the summertime, likely need to supplement with it. And I like to pair vitamin D and K, and you can usually get capsules that have both. Those two vitamins work together in our body, so it's good to take them both. And I always test my patients for their vitamin D, and if you can get yours tested, definitely do, and see where you're at. The lab ranges for a lot of things are very, very broad, and not necessarily when you see something in range, it's not necessarily this is good optimal range. It's just you're alive range. And usually here in the US, the ranges for vitamin D is like 30 to 100, and basically the bottom half of that range is I consider low. When you look at folks that are getting sun every day, like they live in the tropics and they're getting sun every day, and you can't overdose from vitamin D if you're making it in your skin. Because your skin, when you're at the right range, your skin stops making it. So when you look at people that are living outdoors and getting sun, their vitamin D is in the top half of that range, more like 60, 70, 80. And so my thought is we should try to emulate that instead of being 31 and you're in that range, but not optimal. But yeah, get vitamin D tested, and likely you need it because we're not getting enough sun.
And I think important for people, international audiences, to be aware of the numbers. Do have two different measurement units? So I think you use nanograms per liters in the US, isn't it?
I think so.
And over here it's nanomoles per liter. So yeah, having that, keeping that above 80 is where I want to be. I think the last test I had I was about 100. But that's with my D3 supplement, and I take 4,000 international units.
Yeah,
we're using nanograms per milliliter here. Yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll put all the conversions on the screen in both UK and US measurements, so that'll be helpful for people.
Have you gotten your on the UK labs? Is the range also very broad like that?
The reference range that's, as I'm sure you well know, doing your job, the reference range is what's usual in the population. So I make a distinction between what's normal, stroke optimal, and what's usual. And what's usual, as we know, is terrible.
Well,
So
but when
if
someone gets lab work in the UK, they'll have that. The range will be very broad, right? It'll just like here in the US.
a broad range, but usually a suboptimal range,
Yeah,
because you're being compared to what's usual in the population, and what's usual is people getting chronic disease
right,
at ever increasing rates. 27% of people in the UK dying of heart attack, nearly that amount dying with cancer, and so
right.
on and so forth. Diabetes, obesity. So those are the people that I'm being compared against by my GP.
Yep.
So I'm not really very interested in what my GP has got to say when he's making that comparison, because I want to compare myself against an optimal human being.
So yes, Ryan, I know that because I've been tested for vitamin D. Yes, the range is very broad.
Yeah.
So when I was vegetarian, I got tested for that, and I was normal. But now looking back at that test, I was really low, like at the low end. But no one was concerned about that at the time.
Right.
No. So anyway, okay. Another question I had in the group was from a lady asking if it is important to change your diet based on temporary insulin resistance. So, on some days we have insulin resistance, on some days we don't. And it can be triggered by female hormones, for example,
Yeah.
right? So on those days, what do you recommend that people do? Increase insulin, make a dietary change? I mean, if they're already low carb, what else can they do?
Yeah. I mean,
The fat, Ryan, would that help? Removing the fat for those days? I mean, I don't know.
yeah. So yeah, there are a lot of things that can affect insulin resistance, and diet, of course, is one of them. Low carb diet can be great, and you're right. Sometimes people overdo fat on the low carb diet, and that can make us more insulin resistant. And cutting back on that can improve insulin sensitivity. And you're absolutely right. The things like menstrual cycle can affect a woman's cycle, or a woman's insulin sensitivity. It's a good idea for a woman to have a different basal rate for her menstrual cycle, and I think those that are doing it right, they have that, and either a different dose with your basal insulin, or a different profile with the pumps, or auto pump systems like Loop. Other things that can affect insulin sensitivity: sleep. Sleep is huge, and if someone hasn't noticed, if they have a night of poor sleep, they're going to have trouble with their blood sugars the next day. And if they have chronic sleep issues, they're going to have harder to control blood sugars. Sleep apnea is really bad for blood sugars, and I can't tell you how many type 2 diabetics that I see that their root cause of their type 2 diabetes is sleep apnea, and it goes very, very underdiagnosed, and it's a big problem. Stress can affect insulin sensitivity. Your exercise can, positive effect on insulin sensitivity, and body fat too. Just having body fat is going to make us more insulin resistant. So, all of those things we can definitely tweak. And so yeah, it's not just diet. It's definitely not just diet that it is an issue for insulin sensitivity.
Can we also say that more body fat increases your insulin resistance, but can we also say in the same line that more muscle mass makes
Yes,
you more insulin sensitive?
100%. Yeah, definitely.
One of the things that I have always seen is a transitory blood glucose control. So periods lasting up to a couple of months, maybe, of just blood sugar pegged at a high number, and I just don't seem to be able to bring it down. So that period could last, a week. It could last up to a couple of months, and then all of a sudden, bam, it's down where I want it to be, and just easy to keep it there. And you know, it's rising and falling through the day as it always does. But just easy to get it back down to wherever I want it to be, whether that's 4.0 millimoles per liter or whatever. And I've got my own theories about, you know, why that should happen. I think the gut probably plays a role, and things that I'm putting into the gut are then, you know, leading to gut dysbiosis, intestinal permeability, and setting up my immune system to have different requirements for blood glucose. I think that happens. I'm interested to know, do you see any impact of fasting, Nayiri, if you're having an insulin resistant period, and whether that intervenes on it?
John, as you know, I have a fasting group. And I think if I can say I've learned one thing from people's experiences with fasting, it's that we all respond to it differently. My personal response to when I did, you've done a 5-day fast as well, John, and you did the fasted run, right, with Dr. Ian Lake. But when I did a 5-day fast, that's an extended fast. And many people say, no, my insulin resistance came back with a vengeance after the long extended fast. Whereas with me, I had 3 months of 70% less insulin. So with me, the result was, well, that's insulin sensitivity, 70% less. I mean, that was like something unheard of. So I was surviving on like 12 units of insulin as opposed to my 22, 24. That's, so, you know, so for me, the extended fast has been very positive, and some people respond to that. I think it may have something to do with your stress response. Some people's brain, I think maybe the brain signaling has a role in there. So when the brain is stressed and has this sort of idea of starvation, now you're not going to have a positive response to fasting. With me, it doesn't seem to be the case. So any other responses from any of you?
Yeah,
so I could definitely see that.
Just very quickly then, I think that I do respond positively to fasting. So if I'm seeing an insulin resistance phase, then putting an extended fast in there can help to correct that. Sorry, man.
Yeah, no, I agree. It could be, it's very dependent on the person, and definitely if it's stressing us out, it can affect our insulin sensitivity. Anything that raises our cortisol, the stress hormone, is going to affect insulin sensitivity. So yeah, I think somebody has to take care if it does affect them, then maybe ease up on the fasting.
So another member of my group was asking about so the H. pylori or pylori. So she suffered with that for a long time, but she was also interested in knowing how common that is with type 1 diabetics, or if not the H. pylori, then are there any gastrointestinal issues that type 1 diabetics particularly suffer from?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a higher proportion of type 1s that are having gut issues, but I see a lot of patients with digestive issues that are non-diabetic and diabetic alike. Yeah, it's definitely an important part of our health. It's a huge important part of our health. If we're not digesting properly, we're not getting all the nutrients from our food, that the things we're talking about. Yeah, so usually my first thing to attack is if there's a culprit food that's bothering you, to get rid of that food. Often, and not in our community, but often in general population, the grains and beans tend to be a problem in our gut, and getting those out can resolve a lot. There are other foods too, and I do elimination diets with my patients to figure out which foods are causing that. And if there's been some damage to the gut, there are things we can do to help. Probiotics can be great. Glutamine is a supplement that can help kind of maintain and repair our intestinal wall. So if someone's had like leaky gut, that can be a good one to look into. Digestive enzymes can help out a lot. And actually that's one that might be overlooked a lot in the type 1 world. There are a number of type 1s that have pancreatic enzyme insufficiency. And I think this might be a bigger issue than we think. And there's a lot of folks that, have trouble digesting. They just have digestive issues ongoing for years, and nutrients are low. And this tends to be the solution, getting them on enzymes to properly break that down. And their pancreas is just not making enough. And it's a different part of the pancreas that makes those enzymes, but there seems to be a connection with higher rates of pancreatic insufficiency in type 1 diabetics. So that's a good one to look into if that's the case for someone.
That also made me think of gastroparesis, which is, of course, common not only with type 1s, but with diabetics in general, and whether that also can hinder nutrient absorption.
Yeah. It's a big problem. If you've had uncontrolled diabetes, you can have that autonomic neuropathy, and then your stomach and the rest of your gut becomes unpredictable in your digestion. So, you can eat a big meal and then it's sitting in your stomach. Maybe you took insulin and then it's still sitting in your stomach. So you're having a low, and then your stomach decides to empty, and then you're having a high later, and it becomes very tricky to control blood sugars. Enzymes help there too, because it helps make the food more digestible and it moves easier through our gut, keeping foods softer. It can be a real problem. Bernstein has a whole chapter on the gastroparesis issues and how to go about navigating it. And, getting normal blood sugars and letting your body heal will eventually get you over that. It's slow. Nerves regrow, but they're very slow. It's like millimeters a year. And so, but you need normal blood sugars while they're regrowing. Otherwise, you're going to lose the new growth. So normal blood sugars and making things easier to digest for your body is the way forward for gastroparesis.
I know I had to take digestive enzymes, not for pancreatic insufficiency, which I haven't been tested for, but when I transitioned from a vegetarian diet. 30 years I was vegetarian. So when I started eating meat, I couldn't break down. My body
wasn't used to breaking down.
So I took the betaine, whatever it's called, with pepsin. So I still have it in the cupboard. It helped break down it's known to break down the protein molecules, but I took it for a while to be able to digest meat. And I think my stomach acidity is just regulated itself. So I don't need them right now. Okay. Another question from one of my group members was about, insulin. What ingredients are insulin? And whether we should worry about, the synthetic insulins, whether there are any toxins in there which cause long-term damage, because we know that exogenous insulin and obviously endogenously produced insulin are not exactly the same, and they don't work in exactly the same way. But should we be concerned about the insulin and its ingredients?
So I saw that question. I looked into that, and we honestly don't have any other choice. There aren't any insulins that we can get that don't have these preservatives. And I don't know that we want them without these preservatives because it prevents bacteria growing in our insulin. And phenol and metacresol were the two major preservatives that are in almost all our insulins. It doesn't look like there's any issues long term. There might be kidney issues, there might be cancer. I don't know how you study those things in diabetics because those things are already really high in diabetics. But it doesn't look like those preservatives are a problem in other medications for other types of people. So I wouldn't stress it. And if someone is concerned, the complications of even mildly elevated blood sugars are much, much worse. So get your blood sugars under control, and there's otherwise not much we can do about those preservatives. There aren't any other kind of natural options when it comes to insulin. We have to use those insulins.
Talking of natural options, when I was first diagnosed, long before you, back in the 70s, I think my first insulin was animal insulin. I can't remember exactly whether it was bovine or not, but yeah, it was animal insulin I used. So I think they're still available, but I don't know if they're commonly prescribed. And
yeah,
I don't even know whether they're better.
Yeah, I've never seen them, but they might still be available. And I would think they still need those preservatives though, because they're trying to prevent bacteria growth in your insulin. So yeah, I would think they're going to still need those preservatives.
But for me, I'd say the level of concern I've got with ultra processed food additives is multiple orders of magnitude greater. As Ryan said, the choice of insulin is not really a variable we can control, but we've got massive control over not buying stuff in packets and boxes and jars and tins. And
yeah, I like the question though. I think it's something to definitely, explore, but we can't do anything about it.
But we do have insulin choices. For example, Lantus is known for its Lantus lows, and many people complain about it because of its more acidic solution, right?
And there was a small link with cancer in Lantus, and I think it was just like one study. Bernstein talks about it. There's other options. Most people do better with Triceba anyway. I know they're getting rid of Levemir, but that was an option. So yeah, there is an option there. But even if someone is using Lantus, I wouldn't want them worrying about that, because it's not a big concern.
Talking of Levemir, we are campaigning to keep Levemir on the market, by the way. So there's some hope there. So let's not lose hope. I'll put the campaign website below in the description as well, so people can check out the website. So there's some progress there, because Levemir is quite unique, and people don't want to lose their choice, their insulin choice. Anything else? We're going to wrap this up. We have 5 minutes left, or just over. Anything else you'd like to mention?
I think.
Oh, go ahead.
From my perspective, I think gut health is paramount. We've spoken about it a bit, but I think being aware of the other drivers of better gut health, I think, is important. So I think there's good evidence to suggest that getting good sleep, getting physical activity of the right kind, moderating stress are all very powerful ways to impact your gut health, over and above avoiding the known bad actors. Ryan mentioned a few, but yeah, for me, gluten, wheat, A1 casein products, so Frisian cows and Holstein breeds and stuff like that. So I have goats products, and sheep's products as well. I guess for some people, eggs might be a trigger, but yeah, I focus on those probiotic and prebiotic foods, as well as trying to do all those other great things and avoid environmental pollution as well. So yeah, I think gut health for me stands, at the center of a lot of chronic disease, and I do believe that it's a big reason why I became type 1 diabetic. I guess everybody will have their own views on why they think they became type 1, but and we know it's multifactorial. We know it's hard to pick apart, but I think it's a big part of it.
Nice. You know, we talked about a lot of like nutrients, essential nutrients that can be beneficial. And you know, whenever I'm recommending anything to someone, I start with food, and if it's not from there, then go to nutrients. There are other supplements too that people can take, and I get asked about these things a lot. And there are supplements that have effects on our blood sugar. I rarely ever recommend type 1 diabetics take any of these things. These are things like berberine, gymnema, bitter melon, even cinnamon is one that gets like kind of made fun of a lot, but it does have an effect on blood sugar. So if all these things have effect on blood sugar, why don't we add them in? Because they're not predictable. And you know, the whole Bernstein method is being predictable with our blood sugars. And you know, even these things from very tested and quality supplement companies, you don't get a predictable result. And I almost never recommend a type 1 take these things. Maybe if someone is a type 2, but you know, if they're taking a substance that's the idea is to lower their blood sugar, I still want to hunt for the root cause of that. Is there something off in their diet? Is there sleep? The things we talk about, is there sleep off? Are they stressed? Are they missing nutrients? Before going down that route. And yeah, there's usually something missing. Yeah.
Talking of the microbiome, of course, ketone bodies are, you know, good fuel for the gut, right? Any comments on that?
Yeah, definitely. They're good fuel for the gut and for the cells that line our gut too. And you know, that's an argument for, you know, high fiber diets and in the short chain fatty acids that are made, butyrate being one of them, you know, and you'll hear that talked about a lot, you know, but on a keto diet, if you're making ketones, you have beta hydroxybutyrate and you're getting a lot more of it. So it's nourishing those cells even more. So yeah, I think it can be very healing for the gut, you know, and definitely on a low carb keto diet, you're getting rid of a lot of problematic foods that I talked about earlier that are irritating the gut. So yeah, gut health is definitely important for our overall health for sure.
And then we know some drugs can throw us off in the wrong direction, don't we? Proton pump inhibitors and things that we're trying to resolve an acid problem. And then antibiotics. You know, I really avoid the unnecessary use of antibiotics. It's going to take a big infection for me to take an antibiotic. I will take one if I need it, but the threshold is much higher for me than an average population member because I know what that's going to do to my gut biome.
Sure. Yeah.
Smoking as well, I've heard has negative effects on the gut biome too.
It always surprises me that there are still smokers out there, but yeah, it's a problem. Smoking's bad for you.
Mm.
Well, and if they're not smoking nowadays, most people are vaping or whatever.
Yeah.
And that can't be very good for the gut either.
No.
So if you have nothing else to add, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you.
Awesome. This has been awesome.
Yeah, it's been awesome, as you said. So what do we say? It's been amazing, right? John, awesome is not a word we use often. However, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and we should do these group chats again in the future.
Yeah, totally.
Bigger groups even, Nayiri. But yeah, lovely to talk to you as always. I love your show. I love your content that you put out. And hats off to you for putting that energy and enthusiasm into it. Somebody's got to do it. And you're stepping up to the mark. So well done.
Thank you, John. Actually, Low Carbon Fasting channel is the only channel which hosts a series where host and guests are type 1. So it's quite unique.
Awesome. So glad you're doing this.
Thank you so much. Well, I wish you a good day and we'll chat again. Bye for now.
Thanks, Nayiri.
Thank you.